Hi everyone, Scorp here, making a video on Duelist's Gemini 2. I want to show off a couple of decks that I made. Two of them are reptile slash dinosaur focused. Since we just got done with a reptile slash dinosaur playthrough, I figured I'd show off what I came up with as a preferred version for a human to pilot. These decks are a little expensive in terms of deck cost. They're higher than I normally would put, but I have to recalibrate to this mod. This mod makes a lot of creatures a lot more expensive because the effect have an attacks on the card. I use this when making the mod. The formula for card deck cost is stats divided by 100, right? And then add 5 if you have an effect, or more than 5 if you have more than one effect. So this first one is a bit of a dino deck, but it can actually win with basically anything. But Armored Lizard is extremely good as more of a boss creature. Since its effect removes strength increases and decreases from opponents, you end up with a very powerful creature. It's a very strong creature to have effect for and stuff, so it's really nice to have. Now here we have options. I figure I will just fuse into a Sword Armor Dragon. The Swordsman from a Foreign Land also works like a Sword Armor Dragon, but if you want a slightly bigger Swordsman from a Foreign Land, you can get the same effect on a creature that's just fused with one of the dinos in the deck. And as a bonus, you get to do 30 damage to your opponent for some reason. Ooh, my. Our opponent have something bigger. So we'll just do this. So outside of his leader range, we're actually just as big as him. I'll just put this in attack mode so that he loses this creature. Yeah, sure, you win. Good job, you did 250 damage. Unfortunately for you, it is dead. Pretty much the only good way to get rid of a Brachioridus is just that right there. Destroy it with the destruction effect. Unfortunately, this is kind of like Magic the Gathering, just use removal. So I'll make my own Brachioridus here. I can crash these two, doesn't matter. Both of them respawn. Boop. 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 I really do like that animation. As you can see, Armored Lizard gets to take out Mega Zowlers pretty nicely. That Brachioridus is going to crash into the Armored Lizard and lose, which is going to be extremely good for us. Because now it no longer has a buff on it, now it can actually get taken out by something else. Unfortunately for us, it just doesn't die. But that's kind of what we expect from this kind of dinosaur in this mod. And what do you have face down? Oh, Emperor of Land and Sea. That's another card. We'll see it more when we get to the Reptile deck next. That card creates normal terrain. It has Yamadron's effect. which is super nice for like the best reptile, because that means it's always going to be neutral on its terrain. Another way to get rid of Brachiorytis here, so. We'll move this up second because we want to create the normal terrain and then move it back to being wasteland. All of these just great effect going off here for us, and our opponent, unfortunately for him, he's just not got really a good answer, but that's fine. So this thing, I looked up all of the cards that I might want to put in the deck. Giant Soldier of Stone also has the remove increase and decreases of strength from cards, which makes it a pretty nice candidate if you're playing rocks to actually make into your, like, creature you're gonna go beat somebody down with. I did that because it's really good as a defender, and then you can basically just put a bunch of shield up cards because I gave a bunch of Millennium Shield effects out. So you can use those, and then you have like a 4,000 defense creature that literally can't be beat over by anything. So we don't need anything here. It's going to move on. But now I'll go through the deck card by card, and then do the same for the next two decks. The next one is Reptiles, and then the last one is something that I put together as I was making the mod, because it is interesting. So we'll switch over to Emperor of Land and Sea deck. This one is a pretty solid choice, I would say. This is a much more expensive deck. It's about the same price as Rex's deck is, but we'll go over to Richard or something. Richard is a much more strong opponent. The best opponent for this deck would be Weevil, since Reptile's leader power just eats insects. Really disgusting against Weevil. But I figured I'd try to show this off on somebody else. Although this guy is probably a bad example because he is... his Flame Cerberuses do kind of hard counter this deck, so do keep that in mind. This is not the world's greatest matchup for me. But Emperor of Land and Sea, excellent creature. And with all of those equipped... Oh, I didn't go card by card through that first deck. We'll do it right after this one. Right after this game. That's my bad. I was so excited to show off this deck, I skipped out on the other one. Yeah, we have an embarrassment of riches and can't play all the cards we want to in one turn. Which is kind of the main concern that Reptiles have, is they want to play all these cards, but they want to play one card at a time, because that's what you do in this game, is you play one card at a time. But the end result is you want to play more cards than you have turns to play them. And that's kind of the main concern that Reptiles have. They can build extremely strong creatures, but they have a huge drawback. Yikes. Hey, no Ryokyu. Good. Well, actually, bad, because I have a Goblin Fan now. But, yeah, you can play very strong... You can play very strong cards in Reptiles, like this increased strength by 1500 that I'm doing to all of my Reptiles. Not actually that strong, but it is good enough. it's just slow. And that's kind of the main issue with Reptiles. But if you are on a nice slow field like this one, where we have a whole bunch of Labyrinth in the way and an opponent that's not going to be super aggressive, okay, that's for sure a Flame Cerberus, so that's going to be a problem. Really do need to draw my darkness approaches, though. This is going to be one of those decks that... Yeah, okay, that's a Flame Cerberus. We do have one of the decks that is going to kind of have a problem against this guy, just because he has a mountain of good trap, and he has Flame Cerberus, which has Jaragamos effect. Ooh, yeah, boom. I kind of saw something like that coming, but... Beaked Snake has Servant of Metabolism's effect. We don't really need it right now because we've been playing a bunch of regular cards. So, not the world's greatest card for us right now, but it is solid. There is a Jowls in this deck, 3 of them, because good card is good. They are expensive in this mod, so I could definitely see and understand people cutting them. He's probably just going to lose the game off the back of Jaragamos effect on those Flame Cerberuses, but that's fine with me. And we're just going to make this Emperor of Land and Sea big enough to actually just solo him. Bonk. Nice. That was a Man-Eater effect. We're batting 1,000 right now, guys. Why did Goblin Fan not trigger? Oh. Oh, is it his leader power that prevents it? Yeah, okay. So, improved resistance actually nullifies Goblin Fan, surprisingly enough. So, that's a factoid for you guys. Yeah, that is about how the duel against him is supposed to kind of go against you. When you play him the first time in the campaign. This is not how he played against us in the campaign, but he is meant to be annoying and have a bunch of cards that just blow up your stuff, which is pretty brutal. Now that I realize that I forgot to go card by card through that first deck, we'll go ahead and go through that one first. You guys are going to notice a common theme. As I put Megamorphs in a lot of decks, even though they're 25 deck cost, that 1,000-point bonus is absolutely so good. It's so good. So first off, Tamasaurus, its effects are lengthy, and basically they're really, really strong. You change the terrain to Wasteland, you have support for your team that's really long, that the extended support range, which gives you the increased movement, the increased strength. It's only 200 points, but that's okay. Open opponent's card, direct damage halve, increased movement, all of it's good. Like, absolutely awesome. These 3 are here. You could use technically a more expensive warrior or one with a different effect, but I use these to fuse into Sword Armor Dragon. These are just cheap, but there are definitely other warriors you could choose, but I just chose these because they were nice and easy and accessible. 3 Tomazauruses, these are available for you to fuse with these, but they also have Muka Muka's effect, which is excellent. We're going to have a lot of that effect in this deck, so they're really only good late game, so it's nice to fuse them off early game. And there's so many of them in this deck that you can just fuse them off freely. Practicals, this thing has Dakura Rider's effect. Great way to make wasteland terrain, give yourself more space. Armored Lizard, this thing nullifies enemy power-up and decreases. Mostly these are here for fusing with rocks to go into Brachioridus, but that effect is nothing to scoff at. Definitely don't sleep on it. Yobengard makes water terrain. If you have to deal with like machines, or you just need more terrain change or something else to fuse into your with rocks to make Mega Zowlers, excellent card. Crocodilus, 2 of them are in here. These things fuse off well, but they also have an effect that is the nature effect to nullify trap. So if you put this thing face up defense, your opponent can't use traps on you. Absolutely excellent card. I have 1 copy of Wetha. This thing fuses with Mega Zowler and Sword Armor Dragon to make Brachioridus. It's also got the Mask of Darkness effect, so you can bring back a spell or trap that you want before you fuse it off. Just another excellent card for when I want to fuse off with Aquas. 3 Muka Mukas and 3 Morphine Jars. Muka Muka does not need an explanation of why it's here. It's just so good. This effect to make your creatures huge is absolutely awesome. Morphine Jar, I had basically my choice of rocks, and a rock that when it dies, it creates crush terrain, which basically means that it goes 1-for-1 with an opponent's card. And this thing has a Rigorous Cleaver effect, so if your opponent is being annoying and you want to just destroy their deck, you can. Morphine Jar is not bad. And I also want to show off that effect at some point. 1 copy of Wasteland. We're making so much Wasteland, we don't need more. A Heavy Storm. Heavy Storm's always good. Soul of the Pure. Pretty much just always put 1 of these in every deck, just because I always need health. Magic of Neutralizing Force Field. Not the best place for this card, but I mean, this card's effect is so good that it just has uses sometimes. And gets rid of that mirror wall with face up, and that's all I need it for. Next up, Invigoration, Raise Body Heat, and there was Megamorphs above. I'm not going into many Brachioridus in this deck. I can go into them, but I can't go into them that often. So Invigoration's just the other choice. Tears of the Mermaid, it's just a really cheap trap. I was trying to keep this deck cost low on this deck, and then the Goblin Fan. Next up, we'll show that other one in about 30 seconds after I'm done with this one. Actually, it'll be a minute. Or 2. But this one's the Emperor of Land and Sea deck we just showed. This card has Yamadron's effect. It's slightly buffed in this version of the mod. But it is a good boss creature to go into. Megamorphs don't need an introduction anymore. Magician of Faith, these could technically be like Wethas or whatever. These are for recurring or darkness approaches. Armored Lizards. Armored Lizards are great. We already went over what they do, but having Happy Lover's effect on a creature that you can basically just buff a bunch with this deck is really nice. Beast Snake gives you extra summoning power. This deck has a lot of 4-cost creatures, so this fixes a lot of that problem. So that's nice. It also turns into Crush Drain when it dies, which is both good and bad. It's really nice, though, for actually, if your opponent's actually just charging at you, these can give you some extra time, and this deck, all it needs is time. It will make big enough stuff to win. 3 Crocodilus. We all hate traps, so get rid of them. And this card's gets buffed, so super useful. 3 Emperor of Land and Seas, and then 3 Serpentine Princesses to buff all of these reptiles that we have. 3 more Jowls just because this card's broken. So yeah, just using the good card. Heavy Storm, you know, sometimes your opponent plays a bunch of Trap or a bunch of other cards, and you couldn't get rid of them. Just use a Heavy Storm on it. And you can recur it with the Magician of Faith, so yeah, might as well have one. Soul of the Pure, Darkness Approaches, this lets you go infinite. Sebek's Blessing, probably the first card you consider cutting. Sebek's Blessing is really slow in an already slow deck, so... But it is a massive buff, because if you have 4 reptiles, it's 2,400 attack and defense effectively on your board. Next up, the equipped. There was Megamorphs along with this. I'm using mostly the water type the water type reptiles, so I use Power of Kaishin in this deck. 1 Gravity Bind because it's good and I can recur it, so sometimes that can just be a win condition, and then a Goblin Pit. Okay, next up, the last deck. I want to show this one off, but this is a very low monster deck. Unfortunately, there's not really many monsters to actually put in this deck, and I couldn't, like, you know, go and just put in fusions for the sake of putting in fusions to make this deck more interesting. But I believe I have made an interesting deck out of the Psycho Puppets, and I just wanted to actually show off what I did with them, because there is not going to be ever a chance that I get to actually play with them. Because for some reason, I just feel like I'm not going to get to play them in, like, an actual playthrough. So would I'd have to play, like, Fiends with a warrior leader? It's weird. So, unfortunately, this deck is very brick heavy. That's why there's Gravity Binds in it, and they're plural. Gravity Bind does a really good job of slowing down the AI. Okay, our opponent has played mostly Spell and Traps. Well, what trap are we gonna run into? Nothing. Okay. Good job, Kaiba. Okay, I wanted to show off this technology. So I gave this effect to Mysterious Puppeteer. I just had to give it to Bat also, because I needed to reuse his effect. So I now have 5 ways to just teleport a Psycho Puppet to my opponent's leader. So I figured I'd show off that kind of interesting technology, and was a fun thing to try to do a little bit of changing to the cards and the effects to make that work. So that was nice that it worked out. I was very happy when I actually got it to, you know, teleport, and everything worked out without too much fuss, which was very nice. So I'll go through the cards. This deck is not particularly great, but it can high roll really hard, and the Psycho Puppets are really big, so... So Mysterious Puppeteer, unfortunately, I didn't really give it a good set of leader powers. I definitely could have changed them a little bit, but I didn't really know what to give them. Next up, Psycho Puppet. This thing gains attack when it's flipped face up when you have Mysterious Puppeteer's leader. Which is really awkward because the Fiend wanting to play under a warrior leader, but either way it works out. Megamorphs because of course. Mysterious Puppeteers. So this has Bat's effect, but instead of teleporting a Jigen Bakudan, now it teleports a Psycho Puppet, so you get to actually be a true puppeteer now. So basically 9 cards to teleport it. Also Mysterious Puppeteer, when you fuse it with Puppet Ritual, fuses into Psycho Puppet. So this deck has extra copies, a bunch of extra copies of Psycho Puppet. And then the next 6 cards are all for recurring Psycho Puppet. So now you can play like... Now instead of 6, you have 12. You can also technically put in Magician of Faith or Mask of Darkness or whatever you want there. And then they can also recur Mimikatz and Monster Reborns along with the Darkness Approaches down here. I just didn't want to go that far to make this deck fully infinite. It already makes big things, but if you want to make a full control deck, go right ahead. Yamis, we need to change the field for ourselves. And we have a bunch of heavy deck costs or summoning power things, so we're going to have to take turns off playing spells. Heavy Storms, these clear the way for you to, you know, flip up your bat and teleport the creature into their leader range and one-shot them. It's completely unfair, I know, but hey, it is what it is, right? Soul of the Pure, 1 healing card. With decks like this running around, you might want more than 1 Soul of the Pure. 3 copies of Darkness Approaches. These let you reset your Psycho Puppet. Give you an extra 1500 point bonus every time. Oh, and by the way, it resets the bats also, so you can teleport them again. So then again, 6 more equips to go with the Megamorphs above, and then 3 copies of Gravity Bind to slow your opponent down, and a Goblin Fan. Basically just lets you dig through your deck. Yeah, that's some interesting... This is a very interesting deck, and I want to know what you guys think about it. Let me know down below what you think about these 3 decks, and have a nice day.